My name is Jesse Glass, and here we are, August the 29th, 2010, in a place called Shin, Urayasu, Japan. If you look out, we're on the 6th floor. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what I see every day.
Yeah.
As you can see, there's the post office and the elementary school over there.
Stunning.
And all these people, these hundreds of people who don't care about me, who don't know what the heck I'm up to.
Yeah.
And that suits me just fine. Because here I am, writing things like this. Gaha Noah Zorge. Wahoo! And otherwise known as Babes of the Abyss Become Friendly. This is from New Sins Press, ladies and gentlemen. And you can even buy it. It's available on the internet. And it won an award, the Publishers Award, from the publishers, New Sins Press. Let me read you a couple things about that people have said about this. This is another powerful collection by Jesse Glass, an American poet in exile in Japan. You can see I'm in exile. If only this was business as usual, that we all wrote daring works. This extended poem chapbook teaches us about the strength of English, how curiosity is part of our work ethic, how language has the power to mean and to turn meaninglessness into a handsome fate. I read his work and I feel like a boxer who, after winning or losing, has that existential moment alone and feels his exhaustion but riding the earned adrenaline for all it's worth. Jesse isn't taking a risk, for he is the risk. How's that? That's by Rain Arroyo, a wonderful poet who just passed on recently. So I'd like to dedicate this interview, for what it's worth, to the memory of Mr. Arroyo. He was very fine. And there are other things that people say about this collection, but I want to tell you a bit about how this happened. This is just a fragment of a longer project that I've been working on, and mining this incredible book, a true and faithful relation of what passed for many years. Actually, the S's look like F's, so I'm going to pronounce them as F's just for fun. A true and faithful relation of what passed for many years between Dr. John Dee, a mathematician of great fame, and Queen Elizabeth and King James, their reigns, and some spirits tending, had it succeeded, to a general alteration of most states and kingdoms in the world, etc., etc. And put together by a gentleman by the name of Merrick Casaubon, D.D., who was a bit of a, according to Samuel Johnson, he was a bit of a windbag, even though he was quoted in Johnson's dictionary. So here it is. And it's a wonderful book. You know, Borges talks about books of sand, and this indeed is a book of sand, I think, because it doesn't appear to have a beginning, although it kind of does, and doesn't appear to have an end either. It sort of begins in the middle, and it's all kinds of wonderful apocalyptic visions and other things happening in it. But one thing, for instance, is a language that was supposedly dictated by angels by means of a scrying stone, a small cloudy crystal that Dee had, and also a kind of, it looks a bit like a mirror carved out of obsidian that Dee also had, through which he attempted to contact these other intelligences in the other world. He had a series of people that he used to try to contact the other side, including his son Arthur Dee, who later became a kind of chemist himself. But the one gentleman that he used who was most successful, and probably the biggest scallywag, was a guy by the name of Kelly. And we'll show you a picture. Here's Edward Kelly, supposedly as he looked when he knew Dee. And of course here's John Dee, who was a sort of universal doctor He had his fingers in all kinds of pies, and he also had a very young wife, and we can talk about that later. But Kelly would look into these crystals, and he would dictate what the angels supposedly were saying, and Dee would write down these dictations from the other side. And so, for instance, here's E.K., meaning Edward Kelly, asking the spirits some question, and then a triangle was D, writing down his prayers and that sort of thing. So this was not a diabolical operation at all, because D was quite a religious person, so he's always praying in a Christian manner. But the results were kind of questionable. A mixture of surrealism, a mixture of all kinds of folklore, of all kinds of meaty things, that when I first saw these texts, fascinated me, and what made me want to dive into them and mine them for all they were worth. Here's another thing. This is how the table was set up, that the crystal was put on, and these are all the Enochian letters of the alphabet that were dictated supposedly by these intelligences, and these tables that were used to communicate with different spirits in the other side. So, I mean, this is just incredible. Here's a specimen of the tables of the book of Enoch that was dictated, again, supposedly by these otherworldly intelligences via the crystal and by means of Edward Kelly. Here's a vision that was later engraved on a golden plate that Kelly sees and describes to Dee. This was supposedly a vision of towers and angelic intelligences in those towers. So this is what this is about, and what I did, being a kind of brave gent, was I attempted to replicate some of these experiences using crystals. Hold on. Using 2 crystals, which I carried around with me. My Urim and Thummim. And I put the skull in one eye.
Whoa.
And this little thing in the other eye. And I would peer through them and see what I could see. And what I saw, well, what did I see? Sometimes I wonder what I saw. But what I did see, though, when I stared upon the texts, was interesting poems that I carved out of the text in a manner that I learned from a poet by the name of Johnson in his wonderful book, and also Tom Phillips, but Johnson's book, Ronald Johnson's book, Radios, which he took Paradise Lost and kind of X'd out certain sections and created poems, carved poems out of the text. Phillips's Humament also does that. And so I did that with this text that was literally throbbing with myth and other things. And the result, a section of the result, is published in this wonderful book.